So license processing. So these apply to any housing related license. They all operate the same no matter whether you're using mandatory, additional or selective licensing. So great news, you've only got one set of stuff that you have to learn. So the emphasis is on the landlord or the property manager to seek out information to work out whether their property is subject to licensing. And they've got to be pretty careful about this as well, because remember, so if it's mandatory licensing, then you'll know straight away if it applies to your property. But remember I said that the local authority licensing schemes, the additional licensing schemes and the selective licensing schemes that come under discretionary licensing last for 5 years, and they can be brought in at any time across a local authority area. And so the landlords need to be constantly aware and constantly checking to see if their property is subject to one of these licensing schemes. So the local authority can sit back and wait for the license application forms to come in. And when they get that application form, it should have a fee attached to it, so it'll be a financial payment. This is in two parts, remember, one part to pay for the cost of administering the license and the other part to pay for the cost of administering the scheme as a whole. And so once they've got that application form, they check that it's been filled in properly, and there's a whole load of prescribed information that they've got to put on the application. I've done countless of these applications, and the information they have to provide is quite exhaustive. So once they've got the application form, they've worked out if it's been filled in properly, they've got enough money for the fee, they then can say that the application form is duly made, and they can go on to process the license. So the local authority can license just about anything that's subject to licensing, as long as it satisfies these conditions. So one is that the property is reasonably suitable for the number of people that the license is intended to cover. So if we think that the property is never going to manage to cover that number of tenants, even after you've asked them in the license to put in a new bathroom or extra kitchen facilities, then the local authority can say no to that license. The local authority must be satisfied that adequate management arrangements are in place, and so if the landlord lived in Australia and they hadn't found a local agent to run the property on their behalf, then you could say that that wasn't adequate management arrangements, because if a pipe bursts or the electricity, something goes wrong with the electricity and it goes off, then that landlord needs to be readily accessible and able to intervene in order to rectify those problems. So really you need somebody who's who's able to visit the property, and they've got the financial control to be able to pay for works to rectify large repair problems or emergency repair problems. The proposed license holder must be the most appropriate person to hold the license, so it's not uncommon for a letting agent to offer to hold the license on behalf of the landlord, and we would usually say no to that, because the landlord ultimately has the purse strings, they have financial control of the property, and so they're the one that needs to be the license holder, because they've ultimately got the legal responsibility for the property. If it goes to a letting agent in this situation, they may not have, the landlord may turn around and refuse permission for works to be carried out if they were very expensive, and the letting agent would then be unable to comply, and so the works wouldn't get done and the license would be a bit of a waste of time. So because the letting agent, you could just say, well, I've got a reasonable excuse, I can't comply. So the other thing is that the license holder and any manager that's taking part in the day-to-day management of the property needs to be a fit and proper person. And I explain what that is elsewhere, but it means that they've got to be free from criminal convictions or proof of offences which would make them inappropriate to manage residential properties. So once they've got their license, the license will have mandatory and discretionary conditions. drafted into it. The mandatory ones, there's a few of these which are, it's like 5 of these which are apply to all licenses, and then they're slightly different for selective licensing. And then discretionary conditions are there's a whole wealth of conditions that local authority, it's the Local Housing Authority (LHA) on this slide, can place on their license in order to tailor the requirements for the landlords to carry out to the issues that you have in their local authority area. So this is what the licensing process looks like. This is mandatory licensing process. However, I should add that the selective licensing process and the additional licensing process look exactly the same. So we'll just cut that out. So the owner or manager makes the application, they answer the prescribed questions, and they give the appropriate declarations. The local authority takes a fee and confirms the application form has been duly made. The local authority then has a rather labour intensive process it must go through in order to get the licence out. And so the first thing that it must do is to send out a draft of the licence with all the conditions attached, and that gets sent out to anyone with a legal interest in the property. So that goes out to the mortgage lender, it goes out to any freeholders on the property, goes out to any co-owners of the property and any managers. They then have a period of time, which is 14 days, to make representations about whether they agree with those conditions, or whether the number of people the property is eligible to house, or whether they disagree. If they disagree, if there's significant modifications that need to be made to accommodate that disagreement by changing the conditions of the licence, then the local authority has to then make another draft of the licence with the changes added to it. There's then a further 7-day period for for anyone with a legal interest in the property to raise further objections. If they do, and if further changes have to be made, then it goes through yet another round of drafts and of consultation before eventually everybody is happy, nobody raises objections, and then the local authority draft and send out a formal license along with the schedule of works and conditions, and this will typically last for a period of 5 years. Occasionally local authorities will give them for shorter periods of time if they have major concerns about the person that they're issuing the license to, and in some very few areas they may have a blanket requirement to give licenses for shorter periods of time. But 99 times out of 100 they will serve the license. It goes out to everybody, including the tenants this time, who has a legal interest in the property, and that typically lasts for a period of 5